Hey, what's up everyone, and welcome back to another video. In this video, we're going to see how we can generate beautiful analytics reports in Python using Quarto. So probably like 3 years ago now, I made a similar video to this. And honestly, we made a pretty good looking analytics report, but the way that we did it was super clunky. I very much wish that back then I had the ability to use Quarto to generate these reports. So we're gonna remake that video. We're gonna generate some country analytics reports in this video, starting from basic nothing to having a very polished looking, beautiful report. We'll even see how we can generate hundreds of these reports. So you can generate not only USA's report, but you can generate India's, Argentina's, Canada's, France's, etc. All dynamically, automatically with just one run of a script. I've been really enjoying using Quarto recently, so I hope that you all enjoy it as well. I do want to quickly shout out Posit Cloud for sponsoring this video. If you need a place to show off your Quarto projects, your shiny dashboards, your Streamlit applications, Posit Cloud is a great place to do it. To get started, check out the link in the description. All right, let's get into it. To get started, I recommend opening up a terminal window, and then you'll want to create a directory where you can store your reports. So I'll make mine in code, and then I'll make a directory called analytics reports, and then I'll navigate into that, and then I'll open up VS Code in that directory. You don't have to use VS Code, but that's just my preferred editor. And then I'm going to go ahead and create a new file, and we'll just call this report.qmd. QMD stands for Quarto Markdown, and that's how we're going to design and lay out everything in a report. You also, if you're using VS Code, want to make sure you have the Quarto extension installed. So to do that, you can go into your extensions. You can type in Quarto and make sure that this is installed. You'll also want to make sure you have the Quarto CLI installed. So I'll pop up a link to install that, but you also should be able to install it via the command line interface. So to do that, I might do something like, I might create a virtual environment first. Then activate that virtual environment by doing, and then I'll go ahead and install the Quarto CLI. And it doesn't matter if you don't use a virtual environment here. It's just generally the recommended best practice. pip3 install Quarto CLI. Time travel. And if that installs successfully, you should have access to commands like Quarto, render, and you can check to see if this works by just doing the -H to see your render options. That all looks good. So let's go back to our VS Code window. And let's open up that report.qmd file. And with Quarto, the basics that we have access to is just markdown. So if you know anything about markdown, and this is the same way that we write our readmes for GitHub repos, but I could do something like title. I could do 2 dashes for subtitle, random text here, another subtitle, some more random text, a third subtitle, or maybe even a third subtitle that's a little smaller. And then maybe I start writing the speech from Miracle. Great moments are born from great opportunities. Great movie. I could just keep going, but for the sake of time, this is our starting report. If you install the extension, you'll have the access to build a little report just via clicking this right here. And we see we get this nice little HTML document from all these headers and whatnot. So that's a great starting point, but let's start making this more advanced, more sophisticated, more fun. So I'm going to also start adding some options to the top of my page. So this is just the standard format with Quarto Markdown, but you had these 3 lines, you had these 3 lines, and we can start specifying some built-in features here. So I might add, like, my title is, we're going to build country reports in this. So I'm going to just call this country report. I'm going to say my subtitle, maybe it's like a specific country. So United States. I will say that the author is Mr. Galli. I don't know who this might be. And that should be a good starting point. Render this. Cool, so we see that we have some of this additional kind of pre-formatted stuff. Let's say I didn't want HTML here, but instead wanted something fun like a PDF. So I can use PDF default. And if I run this, we're going to see now a report.pdf file get generated. So looks a little bit different, but we see that it's also a nice format there. One thing that's super cool is we can even do something like format is reveal.js. I can just make that the default settings. And if I run this, we're actually able to create slideshows directly in this Quarto Markdown file. We got this nice country report by Galli. We got our title, subtitle, random text, etc. So you can kind of split up the slideshow as you see fit. Some other cool things that you might want to do. So we'll hide the slideshow for now. But going back to the PDF example, some things you might want to have is like a table of contents. So I might say table of contents is true. And we see we get like a table of contents before that. So we already have like a nice looking report here, but I feel like I haven't even shown some of the best features here. So I'm going to just hide this real quick. One thing that's super helpful about this Quarto Markdown is there's other Markdown renderers. So this is nothing super advanced right now. But one thing that's super nice with Quarto Markdown is that by passing in 3 apostrophes, I guess. I don't know what you call this mark specifically. It's the one on the top left of the keyboard, at least on my keyboard. But you pass those in and specify Python like this. We actually can write some code. So I could do something like for I in range 50, how about? Print hello world. And if now we run this little render function, oh, I guess I didn't install any other libraries in our virtual environment, so we'd probably want to like follow its instructions to and make sure I'm activated my virtual environment here too. Just change my Python interpreter to the Quarto one I just created. And let's try running that again. And look at that, we get the code here, and then we even get the output 50 hello worlds. So maybe that was a little bit extra. Maybe I could do, just 5 hello worlds. You can play around with this. And you can start getting more sophisticated. So maybe for this another subtitle, I want to create an actual matplotlib chart. I have GitHub Copilot installed, so I might just say something like, create a simple bar chart in matplotlib. It already knows I'm doing a country report. Dang nabbit. But actually, this is probably great. So it has that, but we need to surround this with our Python code block. And then we see the nice color highlighting pops up. And we want to end it with the plot.show. And if I make the code a little bit smaller, you should be able to see everything that's in that cell. See this? And I can run the cell like this. We don't have matplotlib because we just created that new virtual environment. So any libraries that you need to install, you can just do a pip3 install matplotlib in this case. We're going to get into a more sophisticated repo in a little bit. And in that, there's a requirements.txt file. If you check the YouTube description, you can get a head start on that. But we have a requirements.txt file that you can just install all of these libraries all at once by doing something like pip3 install -r requirements.txt. So that's if you download the repo that's linked in the description. But now that we have matplotlib, we should be able to go ahead and plot this. Cool, look at that. And now if we generate our report again, we'll see we have our graph right there in the report. We also have our code. You may or may not want your code. So some things that we could do if we didn't want our code to show is you can do a parameter echo is false. I believe that that will turn off our code from showing. And we see now we just have the output, so we don't actually have the code. So you can play around with that. There's other options. I'll link the documentation for all the different parameters based on the format you're using from the Quarto reference pages. Real cool, quick. I'm just going to go back to that slideshow format just because I think it's worth seeing. I'm going to make this a level 2 header, but we have some cool access to things. Just from that, we have this slide. And this is super helpful if you have some sort of report that you need to show off that has actual Python code in it. Very, very useful kind of out of the box abilities. So I'll pull in that documentation real quick. If you ever can't find it, you can just look up Quarto docs, let's say like PDFs. And we'll see different options that we have. If we go down, we'll see, all sorts of different things that we can do. That's great. All right, what else might we want to do here? One thing that I see is that we start getting a bunch of files output here. And when you have a bigger repo and maybe are generating more types of PDFs, it might get annoying to have them all be added to your kind of root directory. So what I recommend doing is also adding a file called quarto.yaml. And in this, you'll do project and you'll do, I think, output directory, and just call it something like outputs. And what this will do, if you have this file in the same directory as your QMD file, if I run this again, we're going to see a new directory get created called outputs. And now all my files will end up in outputs. So this is super helpful as we start generating analytics reports for each country to kind of store them there. Also worth mentioning is that in our terminal, and you could do this either in your, maybe it'll be easier for me to do it in my VS Code terminal, but I could do something like Quarto render. I want to render the report.qmd. And I could even give it an output name, like output is abcdefg.pdf. And now we see abcdefg.pdf here. If I actually open this up with a PDF reader, we see we still get that same analytics report. My screen looks so crazy right now. Let's close some of this stuff. That's all good. All right, what else do we want to see? I think this is a good transition point. Let's move over to the corresponding repo to this video to actually start generating more interesting looking charts. So you're going to want to go to github.com/keithgalli/country-analytics. I've also linked this in the description of the YouTube video. And we're going to, you'll probably want to fork this. So click the fork button, create your own copy. And then once you have your own copy, you want to go ahead and copy this. And then in your terminal, in whatever directory you want to store this, so maybe you wanted to put it somewhere else, you do a git clone and then paste in that link. And that should give you access to all the things that we have here. Okay, there's a bit more going on in this county-report.qmd, and I'm going to kind of walk through quickly and explain it. One first thing is that if you want to dynamically load in parameters, so like one of the big advantages of this Quarto Markdown and of using Quarto in general is that we could generate a bunch of nice looking reports quickly and with different parameters. So this is just kind of the nature of how you do it in Python, but you'll want to specify this tags parameters and then set some default values for parameters that you might want to change. So we got a color, country code, etc. Next, we're loading in data. So you don't have to have any of the code included in the Quarto Markdown, like because we have echo equals false here and we load this data in and we're loading data in from different files even. So we have this like report helpers file that we can see right here that has a bunch of plotting code. We can load all of that in. We can load functions from it. We can load in some data sources. So we have two main data sources for this reporting project. We have some United Nations country data, and we have some World Bank country data. I've specified in the README of the GitHub repo kind of a little bit information about both of those. But yeah, we load in all our data files, and then we can start calling the functions that we load in. So we have this plot country function, and maybe I should just run this file real quick so you can see what I'm talking about. It looks like we don't have the modules installed. This is what I was saying before. Go ahead and when you're in this directory, do a pip3 or pip install -r requirements.txt, and this should install everything that you need to run this code. Now I want to go ahead and run this country report.qmd file. You can see that it is running the output, and it generated a country report for Argentina here. That looks cool. We can change up some of these parameters, and I'm going to get into some of the details here in a second. But let's say we would want to generate a blue looking USA report. All right, so how would we do that? Well, a blue color, if I look up blue hex color, here's a blue, take that. I could just pass in this hex code as the new color. I'm going to specify I want USA here. All right, and we'll rerun this. Okay, now we have this USA chart, but notice how it still says country report Argentina here. This is a little nuance. Maybe I'm just missing something here, but if you really want to get into advanced formatting and nice looking charts that fully custom, look really polished, one recommendation I recommend is checking out this typest format that you can output in Quarto. And this is, another type of PDF. And typest, if you're not familiar with it, if you are familiar with LaTeX, it's basically a system that was built to be similar to LaTeX, but easier to learn and understand. So it's kind of like a simplified LaTeX. But using typest and using these typest show and typest templates, we can start adding, more complex customizations to our reports. And I didn't know too much about types until I watched a recent Posit Conference talk by David Kais and the R for the Rest of Us team, which I found super, super useful. So I'll pop that up on the screen. I definitely recommend checking it out if you're curious to build templates and whatnot. But basically, we have these two files. This type show kind of takes in our parameters, and then this types template, populates those parameters in a meaningful way. So we have our country report one here, and basically we're just saying, set up a header that uses our country code, uses the title that we specify, and gives it a color that we might specify as well. So we say the background of this, in the background of this page, we have a rectangle that's filled with the color here that we have ultimately specified right here. And I think if you're programming in R, so one nice thing to know is that in addition to running Python cells, you can very easily run R cells in Quarto. But if you're running R cells, you have easier access, I would say, to these parameters. There's not as much quirks. But basically, when we're running in Python as of now, you kind of have to specify some metadata parameters and Python parameters to change up things properly. Not super, super important for many cases to understand these nuances, but I will just show a quick example of what I'm talking about. So if I wanted to say generate a blue USA report that was fully blue, I might run something like Quarto render. I'll make this slightly bigger. Quarto render. We want to do country report.qmd. I want to specify some parameters. So I want the country code to be USA. I want to specify another parameter. How about the color to be that? This is a little bit weird because we use a hashtag, and hashtags I don't think are super known in terminal speak, but 000FF. is our color, and then we want to specify some metadata, and our country code is the same, USA, and our color here. Only difference when we're doing the type stuff is ultimately we're going to pass it in as just a string without the actual hashtag or the pound sign, whatever you want to call that. But if I run this, and maybe I give it an output called cool new report.pdf, and I broke something. What did I break? Okay, I don't know what happened there. Okay, paper mill package is required for processing. So if it wasn't already in the requirements.txt, just make sure you have a pip3 install paper mill. And then we're going to go ahead and run that previous command. And I'm just pressing the up arrow to get to my previous commands. We might have to restart the terminal quick. Okay, looks like it ran. Now we have cool new report.pdf. Go to our outputs. We have a bunch of country reports here. Cool new report PDF. And look at this great looking PDF report. Okay, this shouldn't be English, but if we do open this up in the Finder and I do click on it and open up in Adobe, we do get that nice looking report in the blue. That blue is a little too blue for me. So maybe that wasn't the best blue to choose, but a cool fun fact about this repo, and I think a cool area for extensions. I'll kind of go into some of the code here. But as part of this repo, there's also a file called create all reports. And that basically just programmatically runs that Quarto command that we were just seeing, specifying different parameters and metadata parameters, and then does a little clever thing where it uses this color thief library. And it basically looks at a flag image. There's a whole folder of flags in this repo, but it looks at a flag image, tries to take a color that seems emblematic of the repo from that flag, and then it basically passes that hex color in to create the report. So one thing that I thought was super cool is like if we looked at like a country like Argentina that has this very light blue color, it is smart enough to know and grab, if we go to our outputs and open up the Argentina one, it's smart enough to know to grab that color to generate the report with that. So super cool stuff. Cool, covering a lot here. I think the last thing I do want to dive into is just let's talk about the code a little bit and some nuance here. So these types templates let you have a custom header, custom footer, do all sorts of fancy things. We could have also added like a footer if we wanted to. I commented that out, but thank you to David Kais for providing this template. If we look at our report helpers functionality, we can see a bunch of different things. We're plotting the country using GeoPandas. And at some point, I'll probably do a detailed deep dive into actually writing all of this code from scratch, but I want to make this kind of a high-level quick overview. So this plots the country on the screen. We also have a function that calculates population over time. Does a little nuance if the populations are very small and counts it in thousands versus millions. Makes a matplotlib chart for the gender ratio of these countries at birth. Then we have like plot ages, all of this fun stuff. This is actually using a different data frame. You can kind of go through the Quarto markdown and compare to figure things out. Let's see what else. I think this one was kind of cool. So if we look at the report one more time, and we see like how these digits are being shown, that's ultimately being done via this highlight text function. And it's just basically drawing some text with a certain size and a header with a certain size. And it's using this open sans font that is specified in this fonts part of the repo. This just pulls some information from a data frame. So all straightforward stuff. I think one of the key things here is that with all of these matplotlib charts, we're passing in a color. And basically that's, if we look at our report, by specifying this color and then passing it in to all these preceding functions. So like we pass in the color to highlight text here, pass in the color to the gender ratio chart, pass it into the median age, life expectancy, as well as these population over time and plot ages charts. All of them are getting the same color. That's how we make this a little bit more uniform. So you can do smart things like that by passing in a color at the top of the page, especially by specifying with tags parameter, and then using it throughout to give us a consistent color and theme. What else do we have here? I think one thing that's cool is I showed that you could also use R within these Quarto Markdown files, but one thing I found helpful is that like sometimes you need to just do some extra formatting of your page, and it might be hard to do with Quarto controls alone. So like right here, I'm specifying pull up our charts, -20 points using types. And so if we see what happens without this, and I might just actually delete it fully because I don't know if how these comments work exactly. But if I delete this, we see that, yeah, now it like propagates to 2 pages, and that's not what we wanted. So I'm going to put that back. You can specify other things with types here. I also want to show that like we can do things like using these 4 dots. Basically, you specify the number of dots, and that can allow you to do different types of dynamic formatting for different parts of your code. But like here, we decided to give ourselves a layout. And this is 2 columns. One takes up 1/3, and the other takes up 2/3. Then we specify what we want to be in the first column. And it's all going to be closed by 3 dots because we specified 3 dots before this first column. We see our population number, our gender ratio, median age and life expectancy. Then it's closed with the 3 dots. We also see our second column just has those 2 charts, the population over time and the plot ages. And then we close that. And then finally, we close our layout once we're done with both of those columns. So you can start doing things like that. What I would say is that if you have troubles with formatting things or want to know specifics, I will do a more detailed Quarto Markdown reporting project. So leave those in the comments, and I'll try to gather everyone's things that people are struggling with and package that into the next video on this topic. Some other things, you have some built-in parameters that you can pass into your charts, like a caption or a caption. And there's other things you can look at here. I think that this is a pretty good point to kind of stop here. What I would recommend is that there's a lot of cool things you could do with this. So using the full data sets. So if you go to the GitHub repo, some additional ideas for things you could do to extend this project might be to use different pieces of data. So like there's this full United Nations World Populations Prospect data set that's already included in the data directory of this repo. But there's this other file, this World Bank data, that's actually massive amount of data, like close to 1 gigabyte, but not all of that could be included easily in this repo. So you can actually download the full file from the Kaggle data set and then bring it into your project to create more types of nuanced stuff. So adding more data is one idea. Using more colors, it'd be super cool to use multiple flag colors and somehow find ways to incorporate that into your report. I think that that's a really cool idea. You can make your reports interactive. And so instead of just doing PDF, maybe you render it as HTML. And on that topic, I do recommend checking out Posit Connect Cloud, the sponsor of this video. It's a great platform to show off all of your Python applications, whether it be a Quarto report, a Shiny dashboard, or a Streamlit application, and more. If this video is helpful at all to you, I really encourage you to sign up for Posit Connect Cloud, and then you can publish different things that you're working on via this publish button. So let's say I wanted to publish this country analytics report. I would do this, specify that it's created in this county-report.qmd file, click publish. And after that is done, then you just see you get something nice like this. You can share it super easily. You have this nice looking portfolio to show off to people. Like I have the dashboard that we created at the end of the Shiny for Python tutorial as part of this. As you can see here. And you can share this with other people. It's public. So any public repo, if you connect your GitHub, you have access to build a nice profile like this. So link to sign up for Posit Connect Cloud is at the top of the description. Also, please let me know ideas that you have for extensions of this project. And if you do something cool with these reports, I would love to see. So make sure to share them with me. Tag me on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram. And yeah, I'd love to see your Posit Connect Cloud repos. All right, hopefully you guys found this video helpful. If you did, throw it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I will definitely be doing a more detailed Quarto reporting project that is probably like a full scale, very similar to something you might see for a freelance type project, a paid consulting contract. So subscribe to not miss that video. Thanks for watching, everyone. Hopefully you built some cool reports. Till next time, everyone. Peace out.